Hello everyone, this is the Eachine Trashcan, featuring 803 15,000 kV motors, all-in-one Crazy Bee F4 flight controller with a 6-amp 4-in-1 ESC, Caddx EOS2 camera, power switchable up to 200 milliwatt VTX, 40mm props. By default, it comes with two PH20 battery lead connections. It also comes with a screwdriver, an extra set of props, a jumper so you can fly 1S, an XT30 with that battery connection, two foam pads, one's already installed, an Allen tool, a prop remover, a few extra screws, a very basic USB charger, a basic instruction manual, in a nice case, also with four 300 milliamp high volt batteries. Mine weighs just about 34.5 grams, and as expected, it is 75 millimeters. As we start this flight, the first thing I have to warn you about is I am not flying this especially effectively, and I think that's because this primarily is going to excel outside. Because it is prop guarded, we fly it inside too. There is a big lump of thrust right in the mid-20s, maybe low 30s of the throttle percentage. So you'll see every once in a while I suddenly kind of jerk up, and I have to be very, very steady on that throttle not to hit that too hard and to balloon up. So this flight won't be especially smooth, and you might be unimpressed with my skills. I can't argue with you in this particular case because it's not great. But it is a proof of concept that you can fly it inside. The field of view of the camera, because it is a 16:9 camera, my goggles are 4:3, it kind of squishes things. Our field of view vertically is quite limited, so that makes getting up to speed that I normally fly at also a challenge. Overall, I think this is going to be a quad that is probably going to be flown outside more. They have improved the frames. The frames continue to get better and better every day as we have more and more of these sorts of frames in the wild and becoming more popular. This frame, I think, is going to be quite durable, whether you're flying it inside or outside. But, of course, be careful with cold temperatures because plastic can get brittle if it gets very cold. I know it's been terrible cold around here. Matter of fact, 90% of my flying has been inside. Also notice that the image is pretty stable. We don't really have jello. This machine has been out for quite a while. When I got back from vacation early January, this was already here. I did a bunch of flying. I got one lunch hour, I think, outside, but I didn't have nearly enough flight time, in my opinion, to get some sort of feel for the quad and how it flew outside. I was still just kind of testing. And of course, there's tuning as well. And so I wasn't really satisfied with my outside flight. So those of you that have been around the channel, you know I've been holding on to this because you guys, not everyone has asked, but I have been repeatedly asked about the Trashcan review. And as far as that name, it doesn't really offend my sensibilities or anything. I think it's, if anything, it's a little bit funny, maybe Eachine poking fun of themselves. You know, it's a company's will, whatever these things name. You know, sometimes it seems that these companies, when it comes to the naming scheme, they can't get it right no matter what they do. Whether you like the name or not, somebody's not going to like it. So I kind of think it's funny, the Trashcan. So it's got the EOS2 in there, which is a better camera. We have these 803 motors, which is going to bring our flight time down here. And I am not flying on the stock batteries on this particular flight. I am flying on my G&B 300 milliamp batteries. Those can be had in all sorts of different places, and I find them to yield the longest flight time, and they deliver a good performance as well. So a little bit of a pitch there. If you haven't tried G&B 300s, you might want to give them a shot. I always suggest to buy conservatively at first to make sure you can confirm that you enjoy them as well. So don't run out and buy 50. Maybe buy 2 and try them out. And then if you like them, then maybe buy more if you need more. But we're going to finish up this inside flight, and we're going to do some outside flying. Quite a few flights, and this inside flight was a little bit sloppy, but I felt obliged to show it. And this is on 2S. This is not a 1S flight. Okay, this is my first outside flight, and I show it to you mainly because you'll see those kind of wavy lines coming across the screen. We have been referring to that as jello. Oftentimes right now we're seeing it mentioned a lot when it comes to whoops that are carrying a Caddx turtle, which is an HD camera. And so this was the first thing I noticed in my short period of outside flying was, oh boy, that's not great. I suspected initially that this was probably part of the issue with carrying extra weight. The canopy and or the standoffs holding up the canopy weren't quite up to the job of holding things still. Of course, inside when we're flying at lower RPMs on our motors, we have less vibrations. So all those things kind of coalesce into one big problem. We're also going to do a couple of punches, and I'm going to show you more, not just that sloppy one. We'll show a series of punches, and we'll take a look at those, because I think that's another important factor. We've been seeing what has been coined yaw washout, and I think you'll see it sometimes, and sometimes you won't. It depends on how you dive. To give you a little sneak peek of some testing, I think that for the most part, it's not terrible. We've seen much, much worse, but again, that's depending on how you come out of dives and the angle that you're coming at, and maybe even the height, because it can pick up speed up to a certain point. But the first thing was to fix this jello. So I took some foam and I rolled it up and shoved it up underneath the canopy to see if just kind of shoring up the camera would take care of the issue for me. And so this flight, it's slightly improved. Maybe it's more than slight. Maybe I'm not giving it enough credit. It's pretty decent, I would say, but I could still notice it in the goggles. And I think I'm more sensitive, and you may feel the same way about the FPV view, not when I'm in the goggles, but when I'm actually reviewing my DVR footage. You know, raise your hand if you're the same way there. But I can still see it a little bit. So this will give you an idea of the flight and the flight time outside. We're really only going to get just a little bit over 2 minutes running in this configuration with two 1S batteries, 300 milliamp. If the batteries are of lesser quality or weren't maintained like these batteries, you may find your flight time is shorter. Something to keep in mind is not all flights are going to be dependent upon the machine. It's also dependent upon the batteries themselves. We do a couple speed runs to see if that jello gets worse there, and just kind of fly it around and have some general fun here. Sometimes I get hung up when I'm testing and kind of testing things in the first, 25 seconds or something like that. And then I just want to go fly and have fun, and I end up burning the whole pack. And sometimes I run out of batteries, or I run out of time before I get all my testing done. Now, shortly after this flight, the weather moved in, and it moved in harsh. I didn't fly outside until just this past day. We were under snowpack and ice, and it rained, and it was cold. We had this big Arctic blast that made national news that kind of blew most of the country into the snow and the colder weather. And that's what held me up, was all this different weather coming our way. Normally, over these winter holidays, we have a few days where about every 8 or 9 days, we'll have a couple of days it'll pop up into the 40s, but it has been consistently cold. And so we're going to look at a few more flights here, mainly looking at the dives, because I want to make sure that you can see the dives. You can also see that we get low battery warnings in this flight, and I'm kind of managing the battery every once in a while, because you can just bury the battery in about 25 seconds with these 803 motors. So here's another flight, and this was actually pretty recent. And in this flight, I had the canopy secured down with zip ties. Again, going with his thoughts that I needed to secure the canopy down. And I think, again, it's slightly improved, but not dramatic. It's pretty good. You tell me. What do you think? Is this something that you think helps the camera kind of stabilize to where it doesn't have those wavy lines? It looks pretty good to me, but then again, I think many of you have a better eye for these sorts of things. So if you like what you see and you have a trash can and you're wondering, how do I get it to look like this? I used a couple of zip ties, and if you didn't see it in the quick roll, we'll take a closer look when we get back to the desk. We do some dives here, and you see a little bit of that yaw washout. It's not dramatic or terrible, but the reason why I think this is so important is because if you're flying outside, which from what I've seen, a lot of people do fly these outside. When you look at Facebook and you look at YouTube videos that get posted in various places, a lot of people are flying these outside. And maybe it's because the quiet majority don't post, and those are the people that fly inside. So again, if you're an inside flyer with something like this, leave your comment down below. I'd be very curious to find out if we just have a lot of active people online who are posting all these outside flights, or if we have a pretty good deal, a pretty good number of people who are also flying these sorts of things inside. I'm not just talking about a trash can, Mobulas, Tiny Hawks, various other sorts of whoops that are, this current iteration of 2S whoops, or just more powerful whoops within the brushless arena. I'd be curious to know what you guys report as far as you're flying. Maybe it's just that the outside flights get posted and the inside flights don't. But I continue to do some dives, and I'll splice together some additional footage here so you get to look at different dives. Sometimes it does it, sometimes it doesn't. It really is going to vary. I think it could even, the wind play a role, depending upon which way the wind is blowing, which way you're diving, and how the wind corresponds to the ducks and or the props. But one thing is for certain is that it is possible and it is likely to happen with the Trashcan. This could be already tuned out. There's a very active group of people on Facebook that like to do a lot of tuning, or I say they like to do tuning, but it's pretty cool. It's a collaboration of people. I'm not part of those people. It's just kind of the general public. They post a Google Doc. I'm not certain if everyone has rights to edit that or not, but really that's not the point, is that people are doing tunes and they're posting them online, and that might lend some weight to Guillermo's idea of having a website where you dump CLIs, which would have the tune in it as well. Maybe that's a viable project, and I was wrong during that Q&A. But as we continue to look at a few dives, you see that the flight time is rarely much over 2 minutes. So the 803 motors are very powerful, so it's going to give you a much more high acrobatic ability, which may suffer depending upon what kind of moves you're doing with yaw washout, but at the very least you should be able to fly fast as fast can be, or at least as fast as your batteries will allow it to be. And you can fly it inside. You can, you know, fly at 1S just like we can with a lot of these if you stick with the PH20 pigtail. You could also add a throttle curve. I did not do that. I wanted to show you how it was for me without making a host of changes. I put a PID tune on it, and I'll put that at the bottom of the screen here. You may find a better PID tune in that Facebook group. I think the name of the group is either the Power Whoop group that is posting a lot of these dumps, or there might be an Eachine Trashcan group. I'll try to find it and I'll try to link it down below. Hopefully I'll find the right Google Doc and I can just link that so you can take a quick look at that tune, and that may serve you better than what I've shown on screen. Now that we're back at the desk, if you didn't notice in the quick roll, this was what I did. Now maybe I need to zip this down a little bit firmer. I got this somewhat tight, but I didn't get it very tight. You know, I don't want to squash anything or start to create pressure and then start to kind of bend those standoffs one way or another. So I didn't really zip these down too much, but you do see that it's pretty firm. It shouldn't move around all that much, but we still have a little bit of jello. Initially, if you can see down in there, that's my foam roll. So I kind of pulled up on the camera canopy a little bit, shoved that underneath there with a pair of tweezers, and then let it rest. And then I left the camera angle about where you see it. I think over time my camera angle through crashing did kind of get pushed down a little bit, but you can get that back up here. So I was not flying with real high camera angle outside, which is somewhat unusual for me. Also, the VTX over here is 200 milliwatt. You can change it from 25. I think it just goes 25 and 200 milliwatt. Yes, I just confirmed that. 25 and 200 milliwatt. You've only got 2 shots. And it's on a UFL down there. I would definitely encourage you to unscrew the canopy and put some E6000 or your favorite adhesive on that, because you don't want that popping off and ending your flight time, especially if you don't have a screwdriver, if you've gone to a field or you're at a park somewhere or something of that nature. Securing that down a little bit and would be a good thing, because you don't want the antenna coming off. If the antenna comes off and you've still got your battery plugged in for a long period of time, maybe you went down and you're trying to find it, that could cause damage to the VTX, especially if you're running 200 milliwatt. We've got the Eachine LED, the Trashcan LED here at the back, and it kind of pulses back and forth with its lights. It's pretty cool. I have noticed that these props tend to pop off. As you see, I have one black one. I actually replaced the original with adding some dental floss inside the prop hole and put it back on a couple of times. I think this is just a theory, but I'm starting to wonder if the translucent or transparent plastic doesn't possibly hold its shape as well. So when you push it down onto the prop, it kind of takes that shape, and then as it gets beat around, you know, as you bang into stuff, and maybe the props, because these are gonna, you get a prop over here and then you bang into something, that maybe it loosens that hole over time, whereas I didn't see that with the traditional props that we've seen on a lot of these. These guys, you know, these have been beaten up, but I could put these right back on and they're going to stay on. So you might want to consider also, if you have a trash can or you're getting a trash can, some different props. There are a bunch of different props on the market. You've got HQ props. You've got Team Black Sheep props. Those are the 4-bladers. Now with the 4-bladers, I found that the machine would want to, as soon as you arm, if you have air mode on, the machine would almost kind of take off, so it'd kind of skitter around on the ground. So if you've got the Team Black Sheep 4-bladed props, you should probably lower your idle. We've also got the gem fans. I kind of like the colors the best on the gem fans. And let's see, we've got some 3-bladers from TBS. I've actually got these on quads off screen, and I've been flying them. Now, I will note that the gem fans and the TBS props on the clockwise props, the traditional clockwise placements, you do need to trim them on the trash can frame because they do rub. It's very, 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 very minor. Did I say very enough times there? But just a tiny little clip of the prop, and you should be able to spin it freely. So test that if you try to, if you choose to try new props, test that out before you hit that arming switch and take off. You don't want a motor getting bound, burn out a motor and or the port on the ESC. So something to note there with these particular props. I did not find the HQ prop touched at all, and I actually kind of like this one possibly the best. I'm still kind of feeling it out. Again, I've got several quads off screen, and I'm just trying to get a feel for all the different props and how they fly differently. It's a little bit tough for me to verbalize it. Now, I would say all these props, in my opinion, if you want to have a more reactive quad, if you want it to be a little bit sharper and kind of lock into your corners, some people refer to that as grip, these props are all, in my opinion, better than the stock props. You can get these all over the place. I'll find some shops that carry this stuff. If you order from TBS, at least at the time I ordered, they were coming from China, so they took a while. I think Heli Nation carries these. I wouldn't be surprised if we find them at RaceDayQuads and Pyroflip, and the same can be said for these other props as well. But again, I'll put links to those props. I would encourage you to try one if you like Team Black Sheep for whatever reason. You know, give them a go. You know, order a pack. You know, we don't have to have 1,900 props. I bought way too many. But order a pack and give them a go. You've still got the stock ones to go back to if you find you don't like them. Or if you like the HQ prop, give them a try. Or the gym fans, you know. It's pretty cool we've got prop options now. I like that. Back to the trash can. You can see here where I've used one single foam pad, and I really don't think most of you should stick with one. I think you want to bulk that up. I actually stacked my batteries in vertically so they would lay one on top of another, and they fit pretty well, but on many crashes they would shift around. They'd shift forward or they'd shift back. So I would either put something that's a little bit less slick. This foam is pretty slick, or I would increase the depth of the foam that you're putting in there in order to make sure your battery doesn't come ejecting. Also, some people ask about the receiving antenna, which is this little guy here. I tend to run this thing right up through the nose, so I take it off the board, come right through here. Hopefully I've got enough light on that. And you can see that I've brought it right through here, up through that little hole, laid on top. I don't have RX loss. Of course, depending upon how you're binding, you can bind this in both on FrSky in D16 and D8 mode. I would recommend D8 mode. It's a little bit more tried and true and tested, but I do believe there is another version of this flight controller coming out, but I have no idea if it works better or not because I don't have one. I've just heard a little bit about it. I did mention the durability of the frame. It's a pretty durable frame. I have no breakages to report. I flew it outside in the cold. You probably noticed in those outside flights we still had some snow or ice pack laying around in the yard, and those were melting off. So I think it was about 41 degrees today, and it's held up just fine. I crashed it mainly in the house, though, because 95 to 98% of my flying was inside the house, which I don't think is where this excels. So if you're expecting to have to buy a quad like this and want it to fly in the house primarily, or if you have an indoor space that's similar to a home, or the ceiling heights aren't that high, I would not go with this, or you would definitely plan to go 1S. Now, many people are doing that. Again, I don't know if that's the silent majority or if that's the greater majority, but 1S is an option. You could get a 450 or a 550 in there, put the little jumper in one side, plug it in, go have yourself some fun. It's just a little bit more modest. You're adding some weight in that battery, and we've also got not the lightest brushless whoop on the market either. So, and you may find that you need to add some throttle curve if you know how to do that. If you don't know how to do that, there are many videos online about adding throttle curve, whether it's to your radio or to Betaflight. I would encourage you to do it on Betaflight through the flight controller, not on your radio, just because you don't have to keep track of that on your radio for whatever reason. I just think it's better to do it on a machine-specific issue where it is a machine-specific issue. You can see we've got a two-board stack with the VTX board right here, and then we've got our flight control and ESC board right there. You can see where we've got the LEDs come in, and that does just plug in. I have found that this will come loose. so you may find you have to press it back in. I would encourage you to add a little of your favorite glue over the top of each side to make sure that stays in, or if you don't like it, take it off. You do see it's configured for props out. When we talked about that yaw washout when we're washing those dives, sometimes props in is better, sometimes props out is better, depends on the machine. It would be nice if this had come, 100% no yaw washout, but it looks like we're going to suffer from that a little bit. But it depends on how you fly, on whether or not it will impact you greatly or very, very little. If you guys know of a way to 100% take care of that jello issue, maybe I just need to tighten my zip ties down a little bit more. But if you guys know 100% way, please leave that down in the comments below so I know, and everybody else who might come to this video, I know this machine has been out for a long time. I'm late to the game. I had to wait on weather because I wanted to finish my flying outside. It's not about being first for me. It's about doing a review that I can feel comfortable with putting out in the world. Albert put together a video where you don't have to use the bind button on these SPI connected receivers. That was a great video. There's just a simple command that you use, and it only works in Betaflight 4 and above. So you connect to Betaflight via your USB, and then you drop down to the CLI, which is the lower left-hand area. It's kind of a console mode for those that may have not have experienced it before. It's you just typing commands in, and type the command that you see on screen, and then hit enter. That should send it into bind mode, and then you can bind. By default, I believe it's set up for FrSky X, which is D16. You may want to switch that to FrSky D, which is D8 mode. I think most of us, when it comes to these Crazy Bee boards, have had better success in running D8, so I'd suggest you do that as well. And when I mentioned the FrSky X and the FrSky D, those are on the configuration page. You'll find those in a drop down below the receiver selection. That's about all I have to say. I think if I had to complain, it would actually have to come in the jello in the camera, which isn't necessarily the fault of the camera, but there are surrounding components holding its place. I do think it comes pretty strong with features that people want, especially for outside flight. For me, this isn't the sort of quad I would keep around, because I would rather have a quad that I would be more comfortable flying inside, because I do fly inside so much. So that's something you have to evaluate. Where this is going to excel is primarily in those large industrial spaces and outside. So if that's what you're looking for, this is a pretty decent candidate, keeping in mind that you're going to possibly need to manage yaw washout, or you're going to need to drop one of those tunes, which I'll link down below. One last thing. These chargers are included, but I don't encourage you to use them. And it's not because I'm a charger snob, it's because I don't trust them. Specifically, do not plug these into your computer. Don't plug them into a laptop. Don't plug them into a USB hub connected to your machine. We have no idea if there's the tiniest bit of storage on this, and it could be something nefarious. Now, we'd hate to say that, but major companies internationally have gotten in trouble in the technology space for hiding little bits of software on little bits of devices that go onto motherboards for servers, and then they make their way around the world. We don't find out about it for years. So if you're going to use this, be cautious, not just about the nefarious software that might be on here, but the fact that if it fails and it's connected to your computer, it could damage the USB port on your computer, or it could damage your computer in a much more serious manner. Plug this into one of those cell phone charging bricks, like one of these things, and charge that way if you need to use that. But this is the first thing I would suggest you replace and get yourself a charger that you can rely on. I use these. You'll find links below down to them as well. This is the EV Peak. The thing I don't like about this one is that the channel selection, these are the different channels. The channel selection is not consistent. Sometimes it'll go from here to there. Sometimes it'll go from there to there, or there to there to there to there. And then the next time around, it'll go to here or to the here. It just skips around sometimes. And that's a small irritant, but it's still an irritant. Whereas because we have individual charging buttons on this one, we don't have that. This one isn't without flaws in its entirety. I have found that this connector right here, I think, is spread out, or it's too narrow. It's not making good contact with all my batteries, and I may have done that myself. I can't say it's been doing that the entire time, but this has got the simple turn dials, and it's got lights here. We can do standard, LiPo, or high volt. These both do standard and high volt. You can change the rate at which you're charging, and they also do other batteries. So these are the chargers that I would recommend. So if you're getting into these sorts of quads and you're flying with those 1S batteries, these these are the two I would look to buy. They're pretty reasonably priced. I think they're somewhere in the $30 to $40 range, but you can check them out at the links below. I've gone on too long. Tell me what you think. Do you have one of these? Put it down below. What do you think? Have you solved the yaw washout? Have there been other pitfalls that you've discovered since you've gotten yours? If you haven't gotten one yet and you're thinking about it, what do you see as a barrier to you buying this or some other product? I'm very curious about all the people who come to this channel and getting some feedback just about your thoughts. I think we don't do that enough, and it's one side of making videos that I really enjoy is in the comment section and our correspondence. So leave your comment down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.